We're talking today with Mr. Felix Petrongelli of North Muskegon, Michigan, and the interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Okay, now start us off with some background on yourself, and to begin with, where and when were you born?
Muskegon, Michigan, February the 10th, 1922.
Okay, now did you grow up in Muskegon?
Yes.
Okay, and how many kids were in your family?
A brother and a sister and myself.
Okay, and what did your family do for a living when you were growing up?
My dad worked at the Brunswick Corporation as a laborer.
Now, did he have steady work through the 30s, or was it on and off?
He worked steady. He worked there until he died.
Okay, but I guess during the Depression, though, sometimes people got laid off or they worked fewer hours.
He was fortunate. He never got laid off.
Okay, all right. And then where did you go to school?
Mostly at Glenside, Henry Street School, and then high school, Muskegon Heights High School.
Okay, and when did you graduate from high school?
June 1940.
All right, and then what did you do after you got out of high school?
I got a scholarship for playing baseball, so I played baseball at Western Michigan University for 2 years.
Okay, now while you were at Western, what subject were you studying?
I was studying mostly psychology.
Okay, all right, and what position did you play in baseball?
Second base.
Okay, all right. Now, in the period when you're finishing high school and you start college, before Pearl Harbor, did you pay much attention to what was happening in the world? You know, there was a...
Probably not, as a young person.
Sure. Okay, because some did, some didn't. And then, how did you learn about Pearl Harbor?
On TV.
Or radio?
Radio.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, 1941.
There's no TV.
No TV, okay, on the radio. All right. And what was your reaction at that time?
I couldn't believe it happened. How they could get all the way in there and do that without being detected.
Okay. Now, at this time, did you consider enlisting right away, or what did you decide to do?
I enlisted in the Navy Reserves.
Okay. And what did that actually entail? After you signed up and you're still in college, what do you do anything for the Navy yet?
Took one military course each semester.
And the military course, what did that consist of?
Usually nomenclature and very basic military information.
Okay. And so then how long were you in the reserves before you went active?
2 years, and then they called me to duty, active duty.
Okay. And so when did you report for active duty?
July 1st, 1943.
Okay. That's basically a year and a half. So you finished your first year in college and then took the second year and then you went in. Okay. Now that you go in, what do they do with you? Where do they send you for training?
They sent me to the University of Michigan to take regular courses and military courses.
Okay. And why were they sending you to college?
Because of the degrees that you say you wanted to follow, and mine happened to be forestry. University of Michigan had one of the best forestry schools, so that's why they sent me there.
Okay. But why was the Navy sending you to college? They need you to fight. You know, why did the Navy want to send you there?
Why, I don't know, except maybe to keep working on that forestry degree and get some more military training.
All right. Well, were they going to, what kind, did you have a particular job in the Navy that you were going to go into yet?
No, just regular Navy personnel.
Okay. And then were you getting any kind of technical courses there? Or
Some technical courses.
Okay. So basically you sign up, the Navy says, okay, you're going to college some more.
More.
Okay. So you do that. And then how long did you stay at Michigan?
15 months.
Okay. And how many years of college did they press into 15 months?
Well, actually, I got about a little over a year in at University of Michigan.
Okay. But were you working at an accelerated pace, or?
Yes.
Okay.
It's accelerated course.
All right. Okay. And then when you finished with that, what did you do?
They sent me to Notre Dame for officers training, but I don't know how to say this, but I didn't like the kind of training I was getting, so I decided not to continue with it. And they said, okay, then what we'll do, we'll send you to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, to school again.
Okay. Now, just to back up for a moment. Okay. So the reason they sent you to college was they thought you were officer material.
Right.
And officers, they like to have degrees.
Right.
So you got that training, but then you got to the officer training
I didn't like it.
and just didn't like it. So how long did you stay at Notre Dame?
3 months.
Okay. And what did that training consist of?
That was military training, primarily officers, pre-officers training.
So was there a lot of drill and discipline, or?
Yeah, a lot of discipline, and it was kind of it was okay, except I didn't really like it,
Mm-hmm.
and so I decided not to complete it. So at the end of the 3
Right.
months, they said, well, we're going to send you to school again. We're going to send you to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And you're going to do a 1-year program at radar and communications, and you're going to do it in 3 months.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, how did they get you to Fort Lauderdale?
They just ordered me from,
Okay. But did you take a train or something?
oh, yeah, train. Took a
Okay.
train,
Now, was that a military train?
military train.
Okay. And how long did it
Well,
take?
It took, trying to think, didn't take too long.
Okay.
Maybe 10 hours.
Okay. So it did. So they didn't have you just sit around on the tracks for a long time and wait for other trains. Okay. Okay. And now once they get you down to Fort Lauderdale, now what do they teach you there?
Radar, navigation, and communication.
Okay.
1-year course, we did it in 3 months. Went to school 6 days and 6 nights a week.
Okay. And what subjects do you have to learn for that?
Mostly navigation and radar, how to operate radar, and communication, Navy communication.
Okay. Now, was any of your previous schooling helpful?
I think the math.
Math might have been, yeah. Okay. But otherwise, forestry probably isn't really radar. Okay. Now, about how many men were you training with, do you think?
We had, at Fort Lauderdale, Florida, we had a group of about 40.
Okay. And then did most of those guys finish the course?
Yes, what they did is they took over one of the hotels in the military, used it as a military school.
Okay. But the men didn't drop out, or?
Most of them, I would say a few dropped out, but most of them did stay.
Okay. Now, were you beginning to wonder if you were ever going to get into the war?
Yes.
Because it's been quite some time.
After Fort Lauderdale, they sent me to New York, Staten Island, to board a destroyer escort, the Joseph E. Campbell, which was named after a Navy flyer who was shot down.
Okay. All right. And what was your job then on the destroyer escort?
Radar and communications and navigation.
Okay. Now, were you joining a ship that had already been in action or on cruises before?
This was my first action.
Yeah, right. But you're joining a ship that's already been out before.
Been out in the Atlantic and sunk a submarine.
Okay. So you're sort of the new guy on the ship.
Right.
All right. And how did the people on the ship treat you when you went on board?
Very well, very well.
Okay. About how big was your ship?
The ship was, I think, 320 feet long.
And how long?
Small destroyer escort.
Yeah. And it wasn't very wide, was it? It was kind of long and thin? Yeah. All right. And what kind of quarters did you have on the ship?
What kind of?
Quarters, what?
Oh,
Yeah.
Pretty much bunk beds, and I remember them because you get in them, and then after the service, I used to wake up at night because my arm would fall down with no bunk to hold on to.
Mm-hmm.
So they were a pretty good service. It was the food was good, and people were all one close-knit group of 310 men.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so when did you put out to sea for the first time?
I'm trying to think. I think probably January of 46.
45 probably, because the war's still going on then.
45.
Yeah, so I think it was what, November
And
40?
what we did is we spent about 3 weeks training submarines in New London, Connecticut.
Mm-hmm. So,
And then from New London, Connecticut, we went San Diego, San Francisco, and out to the
okay.
Pacific.
Now, when you're training submarines, were you doing anti-submarine warfare from the destroyer escort?
We were in New London, Connecticut, and
Yeah.
we trained to go out with these subs and train them for 3 days, and then
Right.
come back and
Okay.
rest for 3 days.
All right. But I guess what I was asking was, how does a destroyer escort help to train a submarine crew?
Oh, we track them, mostly tracked them, and helped maneuver.
Okay. But you didn't practice dropping depth charges on them or anything like that, no. That not a good thing to do. Okay, so you work with them a little bit. Now, had you ever been out on the ocean before?
Well, just vacationing.
Okay. Now, when you first went out to sea, did you get seasick or?
Seasick was something funny. I always got seasick when it was calm. When it was rough, I think I was too afraid to get seasick.
Mm-hmm.
So I had periods off and on.
Okay. All right. So you did your short exercise at New London, and now you're heading for the Pacific.
Right.
What do you remember about that voyage down along the coast and through the Caribbean?
Well, we stopped in Cape Canaveral, and we were there for a couple of days. They had a circus. We went to the circus, and then to San Diego, and then San Francisco. There's all quick stops, and then out to the Hawaiian Islands.
Okay. Did you go through the Panama Canal?
Yes.
And what do you remember about that?
What I remember mostly was that our officers had to give up the ship, and they had their own people that conducted us and piloted us through the canal.
Okay. All right. And then you head up the West Coast and then out toward Hawaii. Now, when you went out to Hawaii, were you escorting a convoy or were you by yourself?
We were all alone.
Okay. All right. And did you stay in Hawaii or did you keep going?
We were in Hawaii probably about maybe a month.
Okay. And what did you do while you were there?
Mostly just getting ready to go. And I remember some things like vacationing. We had a place called we'll let that ring.
Yeah.
Diamond Head. They had
Okay.
Diamond Head, which is a resort place.
Right.
And I remember that. I'll come back to it later.
Mm-hmm.
And we vacationed there, and then we went to Guam, Midway, and all.
Okay. Now, when the crew got to Hawaii and people got on shore, were there some men in the crew who would go out and get in trouble or get drunk or?
Well, some of them got in trouble, but I
Yeah.
didn't. But it was pretty calm.
Okay. All right. Now, you were in school a long time, you're training and so forth, you're out here. Had you now been following the course of the war? I mean, did you know what was going on? And
Oh, yes.
okay. And so at this point, now you've made it to Hawaii, and now you're going to be headed out into the war zone. I mean, did you have any particular expectation of what was going to happen, or did you really not know?
We didn't know.
Okay. Now, I guess the ship before, where had it been sailing? Was it in the Atlantic before?
In the Atlantic.
Okay.
They sunk a submarine.
Okay. Okay, so you heard about that one. All right. Now, when you leave Hawaii now, were you by yourself, or did you now go with other ships?
No, all by myself.
Okay. All right. And where did you go to from Hawaii?
Guam, Midway, Anahuac, all the little islands, and then to the Philippines.
Okay.
And a lot of activity in the Philippines.
Okay. So what do you remember, but do you know which part of the Philippines you went to first?
Mostly Manila and Leyte
Okay. Yeah, so where the big bases were.
were the big bases.
Okay. Now, in the Philippines, did you get involved in any fighting, or were you just on escort duty?
Now, that's where we shot down a suicide plane near Manila.
Okay.
And then we went from there to Okinawa.
Mm-hmm.
And what they had was they had 3 circles around Okinawa with ships. And kind of protecting any of our ships that were there.
Mm-hmm.
And they were on the island waiting for us to invade.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't know this, but after the war, our captain told us that Truman dropped the atomic bomb, and if he hadn't dropped it a week later, we would have invaded Japan, and we would have lost many, many people because they were waiting for us.
Okay. Well, that's you. Okay. Now you've kind of combined Okinawa with the invasion of Japan. So there was a battle on Okinawa. Were you there while they were still fighting on Okinawa?
Yes.
Okay. And we did cordon that off from everything else, and so
Right.
you had destroyer escorts kind of on picket duty.
That was our big battle with Okinawa.
Okay. Now, at Okinawa, did you fire at targets on shore, or did you just watch out for aircraft?
We're on the aircraft, just watching for aircraft, and we'd make circles around the island.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, you said that in the Philippines you actually shot down a suicide plane.
Right.
Now, did you see that happen, or were you tracking it on the radar?
We saw it coming in on the radar, and I walked out on the bridge, and there it was. We had an Indian aboard ship who was a very good gunner, and he got it on the first round, or it would have hit us.
Mm-hmm.
So we just barely got it.
Okay. Now, did you see the suicide planes hit any other ships?
I saw it try to hit us.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, did you see any other suicide planes?
Yes, 2 or 3 others flying around.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now, at the time that you shot this one down, were there other ships around you, or were you out alone?
Yes, there were ships with us.
Okay. All right, but you were the target, at least for that
Right, we
one.
were the target.
Okay. Now, when you went to the Philippines, did you get to go on shore?
Yes.
Okay. And what did you see when you went ashore?
Well, it was pretty much all Navy and all military and the usual things that you normally would see, taverns and restaurants and things like that.
Mm-hmm. And did you see much of the civilian population there, or did they stay out of the way?
Just and going and coming on board ship.
All right.
We didn't have a lot of contact with civilians.
So you weren't really going into Manila, for instance, that kind of thing. Okay, you're just kind of staying near where your bases are and doing your jobs there. Okay. Right. Now, and then you basically, okay, so you were at Okinawa, you were involved in that campaign, and then you're getting ready for the invasion of Japan, and then the invasion gets called off.
Right.
Okay. Now, when the Japanese surrendered, then what did your ship do?
We were out there and we made a couple trips to Japan,
Okay.
just to kind of help clean up the surrender stuff, but no fighting.
Okay. So where did you go in Japan? Did you go to Tokyo Bay or somewhere else?
I think a place called Otaru.
Okay. There was a big
No,
naval
Japan.
base there. Yeah. Okay. And did you go ashore there or stay on the ship?
We could go ashore, but it was mostly just like Liberty for 4 hours or something.
Mm-hmm. And did you see any of the Japanese when you went ashore?
You could see them, you know, you were with them, but
Okay.
that's all.
All right. What kind of impression did you have of them?
Well, we thought they were pretty normal.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, there was nothing very unusual about
Mm-hmm.
them.
Okay. Well, did you have any other expectations of them before you met them?
I thought they'd be much more belligerent and hate us,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't see that hate.
Yeah.
I think they were more sorry that they were in it because they were losing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and now it was over. Okay. All right. Now, did they give you any particular orders? If you go ashore, do they tell you how you're supposed to behave or what to do or not do?
No, just keep out of trouble.
Okay. All right. Now, do you have a sense of how long you stayed in Japan or that
Just
area?
coming and going to short trips. No, we didn't stay for any week or month or anything.
All right. But when you're coming and going, was that between Japan and someplace else?
No, just Japan.
Just different parts of Japan. So you're
Right.
just stopping into different ports and looking at things. Okay. And now at what point then do you get to go back to the States?
Right after Japan,
Mm-hmm.
back to the States, but at that time you had to have so many points to get discharged.
Mhm.
You probably know about the points.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have enough points, so I stayed out of the ship.
Okay.
They sent us to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba.
All right. And what did you do there?
We were a cruise ship, what do you call it, a tourist. And we took tourists around on island trips for, well, we didn't do it long, maybe about 3 months, and then I had enough points, so I
Okay.
got discharged.
So you were using a destroyer escort to carry people around? All right. Now earlier you mentioned you were talking about Diamond Head. Do you have some particular story about that?
Yes, because after the war, about 15 years ago, my
Okay.
fiance and I went back to Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
And we were on the beach, and I said, "This is the beach. I know the beach. I can tell you some of the places that were here, but I can't see Diamond Head." And so finally, I would end up in one of the hotels, and I said, "How come? I've been on this beach, and Diamond Head was down there, you know, miles ahead and very prominent."
Mm-hmm.
And they laughed, and they said, "There's probably 200 hotels now between you and Diamond Head."
Mm-hmm.
They've just built hotels and you couldn't find it anymore.
Okay, so you got a skyline now that's screening that.
It
Okay.
used to be a big display.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, but okay, so that's much later. But okay, so you come back and you do the. Now, when you were at Guantanamo, were you taking civilians around or military people?
Yeah, civilians.
Okay. And what kind of accommodations did you have for your passengers?
We didn't have them that long. We just
Okay.
had them for 4 hours.
Oh, okay, okay. So it's just it's not a,
Cruise.
it's not a multi. Yeah, they're keeping it overnight. Okay. All right. Now, at this point, you're kind of getting to the end. You've got enough points. Did the Navy want you to stay in?
They asked me to stay in, they'd give me a commission, you know.
Mhm.
But I wanted to get home after all that. So
Okay.
I came home and I was discharged with, and then
Now, at
back
thi-
to civilian life.
okay. Now, at this point, did you have a college degree, or did you have to finish
At
one?
that point, I had, I think I had about 2.5 years in.
Okay. So did you go back to college, or did you just get a
A
job?
lot of it under the GI Bill,
Okay.
and I finally wound up with 3 master's degrees. I went to 12 different colleges and universities.
Wow.
Went to school all my life,
Okay.
and a lot of it was, you know, under the GI Bill,
Okay.
and some of it was on my own.
Now, you got a job at some point, though, right?
Yes.
Okay. So what kind of work did you go into?
Well, I started out, I did some personnel work. I guess they call it human relations now, and I did
Yeah.
that for about 5 years in industry so I could get to know all the different types of industrial jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that, and then I went to school at, took a job at Muskegon Community College as a counselor.
Mm-hmm.
I taught one psychology course, and I spent 30-some years there.
Okay. Now, you also, though, were still in the Naval Reserve, right?
Yes,
Okay.
in active duty.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so if you're in the inactive reserve, do you ever have to show up any place or do any
Not much
drilling?
in there, they had meetings, but we had a annual meeting for the people on the destroyer that I served with during the war.
Okay.
Every year we used to meet somewhere.
Okay. But that was just kind of a reunion, though, right?
A reunion
Yeah.
of the destroyer escort people that I served with out in the Pacific. And a kind of interesting story there. One of the captain and one of the men from the submarine that they sunk in the Atlantic moved to Canada and found out we were going to have a reunion and asked if they could come to our reunion, and they did.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I didn't know them, but
Yeah.
the other members did. So that was kind of
That's pretty cool, yeah. Okay. Now, staying in the inactive reserve does come back to haunt you. What happened when the Korean War started?
They said, we need more people with your background, so we're going to call you back to duty.
Okay.
They called me back to duty.
All right. Now, when did they call you back?
That's June of 1951.
So basically 1 year after the war starts?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And where do they send you?
Glenview Naval Air Base near Chicago
Okay.
for 1 year.
All right. And what did you do while you were there?
We trained planes over the Lake Michigan for military duty. You know,
Okay.
we maneuvered them with our radar and our communications.
Okay.
We did that for a year, and then they said, now you get your commission, stay in another 2 years. And I said, no, I'm going home.
All right. Now, at this time, were you married or were you still single?
I was married in 1948.
Okay. So when you went back in the Navy, they let you live off base, or did you have to live at?
Yeah, we lived in an apartment.
Okay. And what did your wife do while you were at Glenview?
She worked at a factory in Evanston, Illinois, that made television sets.
Okay.
So
Did you have any kids yet, or?
we just, she was pregnant, and we went to Great Lakes Naval Air Base while I was there. For the first one to be born, and he was born in November
Okay.
of 51.
All right. Okay. So, all right. Well, did they take good care of her? Did the people at the hospital take good care of your wife?
Yes, they did a good job. Helped us all the way.
Okay. And then, now, when at this time, had you started at the college yet, or does that come after you get back out?
I got back out and I wanted to get back into school,
Okay.
so I started back up again.
Okay. And then that in turn led you to going to
Just
college.
kept going. I kept working and going to school part-time for
Right.
30 years.
So you got 3 master's degrees.
Yeah.
So what fields did you get those in?
One of them in technical vocational education, you know, drafting, electronics, machine shop, that type of thing. One of them in business administration, and then the last one in psychological testing and counseling.
Okay. All right. Now, I guess thinking back to your time in the Navy, are there particular events or memories that stand out for you that you haven't brought into the story yet?
I mean, just humorous things?
Yeah,
or-
yeah.
Well, when we were training submarines in New London, Connecticut, I had a buddy and the two of us would go in together, and he was a circus man, so he did magic tricks. And he'd do these tricks and they'd buy drinks for us. And he said to me, he said, "You're useless, you can't do anything." He said, "Why don't you learn to do something so you can help out when we go to the bars?" So I said, "Okay." So on one of the 3 days that we were back resting, training the submarines in New London, Connecticut, I went to the library and I learned how to read palmistry. But then we go to the bars, everybody wanted to know how to read their palms, so he had nothing to do and I did all the work. Kind of a sidelight.
All right. Now, the guys in the submarine crews, were they just like everybody else, or do you think
Yeah,
they...
like everybody, and then we had an opportunity to join the submarines if we wanted to join.
Okay.
And one of our, in fact, my buddy did, he joined, he went into the subs.
Okay. Because my understanding is that the submarine crews went through some pretty rigorous training there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it wasn't the easiest thing to do, and they wanted to make sure people could really do that, work well, and
Yeah.
hold up under that. Okay. Now, did they let you get onto a submarine yourself?
Oh, yes.
Okay. And so what was your impression of the inside of a submarine?
Well, I thought it was a little close and something that I didn't think I wanted to live with.
Okay. So you were
You
better
know,
off.
Every day.
Right. So you're better off with a destroyer at that point. Okay. All right. Other memories or things that stand out?
I can't think of anything
Okay.
real different,
All right. You will after I turn the camera off.
pretty normal.
Okay. Then I guess one sort of final question then. How do you think your time in the service affected you? Did you learn anything from it, or?
Yes, I learned a lot. I worked a lot with young people, and I learned how to get along with people. I did finally decide I wanted to go into psychology and counseling, and all of that came about because of the service. So I think it matured me.
Okay. All right. Well, and I think that pretty much takes care of it then. So thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me
Oh,
today.
you're welcome.
All right.